We have had a few weeks to digest the 2022 NFL best ball season. The Super Bowl is upon us. Tom Brady is retired. So what did we learn that we can apply to 2023 drafts, which are going to be coming soon? Last year, Underdog dropped a tournament on February 2nd. We're recording this on February 1st. So we might be getting our first 2023 tournament very soon. And it's time to apply what we learned in 2022 to next year's drafts.
It's been so long, Eric.
It's been so long.
It's been so long. It's like in this line of work, if we don't do a show together every 48 hours, it might as well be 12 years. So
I know.
It's great to hear your voice. It's great to see your face. I don't have to sing these love songs I've written to you anymore. we can do a show like normal.
Tom Brady has retired in the time since we've done the show. Yeah, I see this. I mean, the positive thing for Tom Brady, we'll just get this out of the way right now, is at least he made, the last year really worth it. Ruined his marriage, lost his kids, all for the worst team he's played for in his entire career, the worst season he's had in his entire career, basically. At least it was really worth it for Tom Brady. It will actually be worth it for us took a little bit of a break. Believe it or not, thinking about best ball and fantasy sports and stuff literally 24/7 is both fun for a career and everything, but also sort of at certain moments you could use a little bit of time to not be speaking into a camera, talking to internet friends that you don't know what they look like every single day about, right, the draft strategy of a 17th round pick, that literally means nothing. So I thought it was appropriate, instead of doing, we call this instant reactions to 2022, but taking a small little couple week break, kind of letting everything that played out sink in. And now that tournaments are FFPC already has their very first tournament for 2023. I assume Underdog is going to be coming here pretty quickly, whether it's this week or after the Super Bowl or whatever. And I'm sure drafters will follow as well. Who the hell knows what DraftKings is going to do? Now that we've had a little bit of time to kind of process everything, this is about as instant as we're going to get here. But I think it's a pretty good time to kind of think about what just happened. What was noise? What was signal? What was maybe just interesting or whatever, and start to kind of hash these things out. Because shit, dude, in 2 months, it's February already. In 2 months, 2.5 months or whatever, we're going to be like pretty much drafting for the actual 2023 tournaments.
Somebody was asking me the other day, like, oh, so when you're doing these best ball drafts, you must have like 8 months off out of the year that you don't have to do things. And I'm like, I don't think you guys understand that. Like, our off weeks are like the first 2 weeks of the NFL playoffs is about what we get. And then it's like time to dive back in, time for football. I mean, I love it, but you said February 2nd at the start of the show, and I almost had a panic attack because I'm like, oh my God, we got to start drafting again already.
It really is crazy. Like, wouldn't change anything for the world. This is, people love to hear you complain when you talk about fantasy sports for a living. Mm-hmm. But it's like, I felt like this time of the year was going to be like the fun part in terms of I have some free time. Like, I really want to get into this rookie stuff this year. That's been like the thing I've been trying to sink my teeth into. And then Underdog's like, oh, hey, by the way, here's a $500,000 tournament or whatever for the Super Bowl. Here's a $500,000 tournament for baseball. Here's a $500,000 tournament for golf. Right. There's just everything coming all at once. And it's like, I thought I was going to be able to be really productive during this month or whatever. And now we're already talking about 2023, and we're probably going to be talking about 2023 from now until next year at this time, basically.
We have David Kitchen in the chat explaining to us about how he is one of the best ball players in the world. He's 159th in the world. I don't know if he knows this, but I am 74th best ball player in the world. And that title doesn't get taken away from me just because I didn't make the finals this year. It's just a fact. Yeah. I stay at 74th. You're
I'm
10th,
half.
kind
I'm
of.
half of half of a top 10 best ball player on the world. However you want to, it would. You would probably use. I'm not. This is going to get inappropriate. I was going to say you would use Overzet's upper half. He's a good looking gent and in very good shape. But I don't want to shame him for the lower half. Live on camera or anything like that. So we'll stay away from those. But oh my God, we can't even make it. We are 5 minutes in, and we're already getting Trey Lance questions for the audio listeners. Definitely, Dennis says, "Are we back on Trey Lance, guys?" Well, I don't know that we'll touch too deeply on Trey Lance today. Maybe we'll talk a little bit more macro, but we'll see where the conversation lands. I promise we'll come back to it when applicable. But it is funny that Kitchen brings up skill game. He finished very highly in whatever on what is that? The Millie wasn't 600K, was it? The Millie was like a million entries.
I think he said, yeah, it was like a crazy amount of dumb entries on that thing.
But that's like the big thing I've been trying to think about over the course of the last few weeks, kind of since everything settled in, is like we do this whole dog and pony show. Dog and pony show? Is that the phrase? Anyway, I'll use it even if it isn't. Dog and pony show of like deeply analyzing the results of what happened last year, right? Who won? And this is not to shame. This is definitely not to shame like Kareem or whatever, but it's like somebody won a tournament. Let's look at their team. What did they do? Right. Mm-hmm. Or even then let's look at all the finals teams. Let's look at the advance rates of all this different stuff. And it's like, I feel like we're looking for something as an industry that isn't really there. It's one of those things we want so badly to be able to draw all these deep conclusions about this worked, right? We did this all the last 2 years, basically, right? Robust running back was a thing 2 years ago because Herzig won with it, and it had like really strong advance rates and all that kind of stuff. And so there was all these like 1 year, one tournament narrative supporting this like structure or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then everybody ran with it. It was the thing. We beat it into the ground, and actually it was fairly useless for the last 2 seasons. I feel like the big thing that happens in this space now that I'm trying to wrap my head around how to approach is taking what we just saw, mainly like the data and all that kind of stuff, what won, and learning from it, but not being so tied to, oh, look, Kareem had a hero running back team. He had late-ish round quarterbacks. He had, whatever, X ownership on his players in the finals. And like all that stuff is like really mostly noise, but also you still do want to, like, you don't want to just be like, none of that shit matters. But there's that fine line that I'm still trying to figure out.
I like how you derailed the chat into talking about ponies, and specifically my pony. Apparently I'm gonna have to start singing Genuine. I don't think anyone wants that yet. Maybe at the end of the show we'll start hitting the you want it, let's do it.
I believe you've said before on shows that you don't drink a ton, and it was when we did the hot dogs, right, or the hot wings, one of the two. You went out with buddies, and they were having drinks and stuff like that. If in Nashville next weekend, we will see if we can get you to partake in maybe a couple of extra beverages during the Super Bowl, and maybe do some My Pony up on stage or something.
We have talked about karaoke.
This is not how you spell it, isn't it? Isn't it with an I?
It's with an
Genuine?
I. Yeah, it's with an I. So
come on, Jesus, Dave.
It was Andy Means, myself, I believe Dean. We were talking about doing some karaoke. And I don't go to Genuine. I go to Enrique Iglesias because I'm classy. So when you want to hear some hero, I'll turn it into a hero.
Okay.
I can be your hero, RB baby, or something like that. we can make this best ball themed, is what I'm saying. We all know music's my forte in this phase.
Genuine is closer to me, although I have zero musical ability in any ounce of my body. But definitely the hip hop and R&B area. So it's definitely like inappropriate Genuine type songs that I would know and be able to sing and sound horrible at, or like hip hop, like way too inappropriate for like a public place, certainly with my wife there and coworkers and boss's boss. And, that's the last thing I want to do, rapping Lil Wayne or whatever. And in front of everybody. So maybe I'll have to do some thinking about that for the next week.
I can back you up. I can be your backup singer as well. You come on with Enrique. We can do the I can be your hero, RB baby. I can rush away the pain.
Okay, let's move on from this. Thank Adam. Shout out to you for dropping in the chat to get us off of these ridiculous conversations that are not at all related to 2023 or 2022 best ball takeaways. But Adam says, just wanted to drop in and say thanks for the drafters playoff best ball content. Currently sitting in third overall with 5 players in the Super Bowl and a great chance at 30K. That is amazing. Shout out to you. You don't need to say thank you to me. You drafted you drafted the team. My best team's in 44th place and only has 3 Chiefs. So I don't have a shot, but that's incredible. Five players is almost an entire starting lineup in the Super Bowl, and when it's the 2 1 seeds in a cumulative scoring contest where you took zeros from all those dudes in week 1. I know that they made the Super Bowl, but still, man, that's unreal. Congrats and good luck. I'll definitely be tracking. I'll be sweating to see if I can make like $200 more, and Adam will be sweating to see if he can make like 25 grand more or whatever that he's making.
I think I'm not even that close, but I have a decent team and I have 5 players live as well in that. So I'm not live to win, but
I'm gonna ban Dave from the chat. You're welcome. Him saying you're replying to Adam with "you're welcome." We're inching very close to the kitchen ban here.
Has Kitchen been on a show other than the fake out for the Royal Rumble?
No. I want to bring him on I'm starting to get together and get Best Ball Bros back and running, and I want to get Kitchen on one of those, especially now that he's 169th in the world or whatever as a best ball player. He had to earn the spot there before now, but so maybe we'll get there. But we're 12 minutes in. We've only talked about Genuine and David Kitchen and everything.
Seems right. Seems fitting for our return show.
We haven't talked in a couple of weeks, so we're getting all the bullshit out of the way here really quickly. But was there anything that kind of came to your mind, maybe particularly on like the stuff like, oh, this is what won and these are the structures and everything that won? Anything that kind of light bulb has gone off for you?
I still just think that next year is going to be so different than every other year that we've done. I'm not going to talk about the quarterback thing today, but that's going to be one of them. I think tight end is going to be a real interesting position next year with, I don't know. Do you think Kelsey retires like if he wins the Super Bowl this year?
I had that thought for like just a couple of hours over the course of the last couple of weeks because he's been so banged up for a couple of years. He just feels like that. And maybe I'm drawing that conclusion from a kind of a crazy white dude tight end, Gronk retiring kind of early, and then Kelsey feels like that type of a player. So maybe I'm just drawing silly narratives from it, but he feels to me like that guy that like if they win this, next weekend, could really legit retire. Like I would not be surprised, but maybe that's just bullshit I'm pulling out of my ass.
But even if they don't, it's like the perfect setup. Their brothers are playing each other. Maybe they both retire the same season afterwards to like potentially set up like a Hall of Fame together. I don't know. Like maybe I'm galaxy braining this a little bit.
Well, they already have a podcast. It's like this could be like the literally walking off into the sunset. I mean, I'm sure they already make money from that thing. It's really good. Yeah. Maybe that's the future. They get into media, right? I'm sure he really won over the hearts of all the bigwigs at the media companies with the know your role and shut your mouth jabroni to the mayor of Cincinnati.
Yeah, really selling it. I mean, but he also, let's look at what he did this past Sunday. He wasn't on the injury report. We weren't worried about him being in. All of a sudden he has back spasms and almost can't go or something like that. They're throwing hook and ladders every other play because he can't, because he's a statue when he catches the football. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I don't know. And if my point being is if he does retire, and even if he doesn't, people are so scared of this position going forward, right? Is that just going to push, as we're talking about quarterbacks getting pushed up, are tight ends going to get pushed down? are we going to be looking at a thing where, like, you know, the Kyle Pitts, the Mark Andrews in second, third round in drafts isn't a thing this year. So it's going to make them, I don't know, like, what are we going to do with them if that happens? Like, what if Mark Andrews doesn't have Lamar Jackson? First of all, we don't know what's going to happen there. There's so many unknowns. But what if the first tight end off the board isn't until the 5th round or 6th round? That's going to change some dynamics, right? Are you going to be looking to then definitely just go one tight end, or are you going to be looking to just stockpile at the end? Like, it's gonna be interesting for the builds. That's what I would say.
Good comment by GA. Yeah, he's gonna be Voldemort. We're just gonna have to call, you know, he who shall not be named is Kyle Pitts. The tight end thing is really interesting. I think it's a good relatively micro example in between macro and micro example of like what you started talking about with, like, everything is going to be so different. And that is the case year to year in fantasy football generally, right? I mean, the player pool changes, our perceptions of players get a year older, and 1 year, you know, it's like fucking dog years for football players. You know, one year older makes a big difference. Especially like you said with like Travis Kelce. I mean, he's going to turn 34 at the beginning of next season, which makes me feel just pathetic about myself. What this guy is doing at the same age as me. But I think the tight end thing, like the onesie positions, are always kind of most interesting to talk about, because whether there's 6 running backs in the first round or 9 is like whatever, right? It doesn't really matter. Same, you know, wide receiver is going to be about the same for the first 6 or 7 rounds every year. A little bit, right? We've made more of a transition to wide receivers as the field has gotten smarter about the RB dead zone and just running backs in general and everything. But the example of the tight end thing is like, dude, quarterback we talked a lot about for the last 6 months. Tight end we've talked plenty about, but it was just all it was saying this position's fucking awful. This position's terrible. Like, we may get to a point where we need to remove it from fantasy football. I don't think we're there just yet, but we're probably not too far away from maybe sites start to remove it from the game. And so what does that mean? That means, like, are people going to push up the ones that they think can actually separate, which is what has happened the last couple of years, right? People constantly talk about elite tight end is like, the elite tight ends are such an edge. The elite tight ends are such an edge. And this year, one was such an edge. The other ones actually buried your fucking team. Kyle Pitts in particular. I know Kittle came on late at the end of the year, but he was trash for the season. Waller was a horrendous disaster, just as bad as Kyle Pitts, basically. You know, Mark Andrews looked good for 6 weeks and then was completely useless. You know, all these guys are dust balls. And so are people going to stick to that and say, look, it's George Kittle, look, it's Kyle Pitts, it's Mark Andrews. Those guys have the upside to give me an edge. Or are people going to be like, why the fuck am I, you know, drafting those guys over whatever superstar 3rd round wide receiver? Like, let's just say, I don't know, T. Higgins goes in the 3rd round again. Right. Yeah. Mike Williams goes in the 3rd round again, and maybe Keenan's not there, or they don't bring in, you know, I'm just throwing shit at the wall. But like Garrett Wilson, are you going to draft George Kittle over Garrett Wilson? Like, I don't think I am. No. You know, you're going to have to make these hard decisions. Javonte Williams, Breece Hall, right? There's a lot of young, exciting players in the NFL. Are you going to draft a tight end who none of these guys outperformed? Like Noah Fant. Like, Noah Fant was like a 14th round pick. He might as well have just drafted him instead of Darren Waller, and Noah Fant wasn't even good. It's like, are you going to spend, you know? So like those kinds of things are really just a microcosm of the player pool as a whole. But I do think, to your point, everything is this year. We've kind of said it the last couple of years, but I really do think this year is like total rocket ship of, I haven't really looked at the early ADP. I don't want to just yet, but whatever happens in April and May, I think is going to be like nothing we've ever seen in fantasy football before. Like literally, it may be closer to back in the day, right? Where quarterbacks went super early, tight ends. Nobody drafted a fucking tight end in the 2nd round back then. You know, it might be closer to like 2008 fantasy football.
It's funny how things come full circle like that. And it was probably not optimal back then, but it's going to be more optimal now based on just the separation some of these quarterbacks do. But the tight ends could be the same way. What was Kelsey, 100 points ahead of the next tight end this year, or something maybe a little bit more? Like he was lapping the field. So if we lose that, like, yeah, you're looking at like, well, maybe I'll just fire 15, 16, 17 round picks on tight ends and just committee that, couple that with a combo with just playing a single quarterback and then just loading up at running back and wide receiver and the other spot. That's going to be a big discussion this year. And I think, yes, everything changes every year. Like you said, dog years on some of these players, like someone that was in their prime. We're going to talk about it probably. I don't know. I can't think of Eckler's age off the top of my head, but people are going to start talking about Austin Eckler's age and Joe Mixon's age and Dalvin Cook's age and Alvin Kamara's age, right? Like that's going to be a whole thing this year. This whole crop of running backs that have been perennial first rounders for the past 2-3 years are all getting older. And I think that the first round's going to be shaken up quite a bit by the end of draft season. I think that positionally we're going to be having a lot of shakeups. So I think that like we're going to gold star this year going forward and look back on it and be like, this was when the tide changed a lot for the next 3 to 4 years coming in drafts. So it's going to be an interesting one from a best ball perspective. My
Eckler is 20 really quick. Eckler is 27, turns 28 in May. So yeah, I mean, he still looks, obviously awesome on the field. He again was a great pick for everybody and was on the winning teams. At least I know he was on the BBM winning team, probably on lots of winning teams, given what he did in week 17. But like, he's at the age with, like you said, we're in a transition, and like we're in a transition at like every fucking position. Like all the superstars, like no one. Maybe I'm wrong and correct me. No one at really any of these positions that's a 23-year-old or something like that. Almost no one. Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, I guess I would say. Outside of like those guys, no one at any of these other positions has stepped up to be like that next guy where you're just like, yep, Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. Everybody was like top 5 picks. Put them more, however you want to rank them against Kupp and all those guys. They're top 5 picks. Don't worry about it. They're the next superstars of their position. We don't really have that at running back yet. Like if Brees would have stayed healthy, maybe he was one of them, right? Maybe Javonte, but they got hurt. And now we don't know. At all these running, like you said, Mixon, Kamara, Eckler, Dalvin, Derrick Henry, we've been drafting these guys for 10 years. Slight exaggeration, but like we've been drafting these guys for so long, and we don't have the guys yet ready to backfill. Same thing, Diggs, Devontae Adams. I just mentioned Keenan Allen. All these guys are older. Mike Evans, they're all older, and we have some young, exciting guys, but it's not like they are like they didn't do what Jefferson and Chase did. That's why they are drafted where they are, because it was like they got in the league. They're top 5 players. We don't worry about it. It's like, I like Garrett Wilson. Am I drafting him in the early second round? It's like the CeeDee Lamb thing. It's like he hasn't emerged yet as that player. We're excited about him, but it's like every single position. If once Travis Kelce goes, who the fuck is the next big tight end? We hope Kyle Pitts, but he's not there yet. And that's every position. Obviously, we have like Allen and Mahomes and Burrow, but there's like not even a full round, like not even like 12 dudes that we can say like, yep, these guys are locked in. I have zero concerns about any of them. It's like 4 or 5 guys.
Yeah. And I think that's going to push guys up to the first round. So like Breathing Fantasy Football and the chat brings up Kenneth Walker. He's like, he'll get pulled into the second round by the end of summer. I wouldn't be shocked if he gets pulled into the first round. Right. Like, so Kenneth Walker is going to probably be a fringe first round by the end of draft season. And guess what? Rookies are going to start hitting the first round too. Bijan Robinson, like the hype
Bijan's
on
going
him,
in the first. Yeah,
it's going to get hyped
landing
right
spot,
up.
obviously, but I can't think of that many landing spots where he's not going to go in the first round.
He's going to be a first round pick. So you're going to get some unknowns in there. Like you said, the quarterback position is, after Brady retires, like the only guy left is Rodgers from like that crop of the older running backs. Yeah. So like, that's what you're going to be seeing in these drafts. Right. And it's just going to make it real interesting. And it's going to be fun to look at our first draft of the year. Like, just say in terms of Best Ball Mania, your first draft versus your last draft. I mean, it was already fun this year and nothing was like too crazily different. There was some things that raised up throughout, But this year, I think especially you're going to see some big swings and changes on draft position on some of these guys. And that kind of leads me into what I wanted to ask you about. We find these sleepers like during the drafts that we really like that start to get pushed up. So like for me, Christian Kirk last year, right? I loved Christian Kirk. We all know that. And I'm not saying he got pushed up to first, second, or third round, but he got pushed up like 2 to 3 rounds by the end of draft season, right? And do you see anyone like that that you're like, I need to hammer this guy early, probably going forward? Because you brought up my guy when you were talking.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I was gonna. There was a comment, and Jonathan mentioned it. I'm not sure that he's gonna be as cheap as like. Again, we think about a lot of this through the lens of what we've experienced for so many years, and so we think like, oh, at the beginning, and maybe this particular player will go through this because he's kind of a weird type of a player. But this did happen with, say, like Garrett Wilson. It was like, what is going on? Why is Garrett Wilson a 12th round pick or whatever? And then eventually he slowly moved up. I'm not sure. Like everybody loves Jameson Williams. I think everybody that I follow and talk to is like, I mean, he barely got on the field this year, and every single time he did, it looked like he was wide open 50 yards down the field. He scored a couple long touchdowns. Goff overthrew him a couple or underthrew him a couple times. Like he could have scored like 6 touchdowns, and he played like 30 total snaps the whole season. He was just electric when he was out there. But Jonathan says I'm leaving every draft with JMO next year, and that would be probably the guy for me because theoretically he won't. He's not going to get the Garrett Wilson, Olave, London, et cetera, treatment because he doesn't have the track record. So there's just a level of uncertainty to even seasoned drafters where you're just like, well, I can't take him in the 4th round or whatever. I'm not saying to take him in the 4th round, but I imagine he's going to be reasonably cheap. And I mean, assuming DJ Chark is gone and he's the, one of the starting outside wide receivers for the Lions, I mean, I would like him in any format of fantasy. But if you want to talk about a better, like this is what we prayed for with MVS and Gabe Davis and everything, like a downfield, crazy, high variance, high upside weekly play. That's Jameson Williams, and he's actually good. And those two guys both suck.
Yeah. No, that's actually a great call between you and Jonathan on JMO. Like if he's like 7th, 8th round, probably that guy in that range that I just hammer every time.
And then he'll be a 5th rounder or whatever by the end of the draft season. Yeah.
So I haven't looked at the ADP currently, like you haven't either. So my initial instinct is that Garrett Wilson is like a 4th or 5th rounder right now. Just like that's just what my spider sense is saying, and I could be off on that. But I think he is a 1st, 2nd rounder. Like
I think he's definitely probably a 2nd rounder if I'm just running some quick names down in the back of my head, but certainly not a 5th rounder, like you said, which is where he might start. I don't know.
And if that's where he starts, I'm hammering him every draft. Like I'll ride him up to the 3rd, 2nd round, and I'll still draft him in the 2nd round. Probably he gets a quarterback. He gets Aaron Rodgers. He gets they're getting somebody. Like they've already told us that, and we know they want Rodgers, right? They're playing the little song and dance game right now because they have to, but even if it's not Rodgers, they are going to get somebody. Zach Wilson is not it. Like he's just not. No. When Mike White is like, when your team's wearing Mike White t-shirts to the game, right? Like it's just not the dude. Like he's not the dude. Zach Wilson's not the guy. He's not going to be a backup guy. He's going to fizzle out of this league. Like he's going to be like Johnny Manziel. He'll get one more chance somewhere else, and then he'll just be gone. Because nobody's going to want to deal with him. He's already crying and bitching. So we don't need to get into that. The whole point of this is Garrett Wilson. I think he's going to be too low to start drafts. I think I'll probably just be hammering him. Although I do like the Jameson Williams one probably more just because he's going to be cheaper. We're getting asked
but Garrett Wilson has the potential to be in that Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase class. Again, I'm not saying he's there. It takes projection to get him there, right? I'm not saying he's as good as those guys, blah, blah, blah. But like you said, an upgrade is coming. You're hoping for Aaron Rodgers in terms of the Garrett Wilson case, because this dude could be the new Devontae Adams, which is absolutely a top 5 pick in fantasy, right? And so you get him anywhere outside of the 1st round, it really is just like nothing but like upside. Like, which sounds crazy to say, like, what do you mean a Jets wide receiver in the second round is like a small loss, big win guy? But I really do think Garrett Wilson anywhere like mid-second and beyond is probably just like free money. Is he gonna win everything? Nah, I don't know, but you're not. How do you lose? I really can't. Like I said, though, I guess the way you lose is Rodgers goes elsewhere, Carr goes elsewhere. I don't know. I'm probably missing some other guys that are Lamar does, Lamar goes back to the Ravens, blah, blah, blah. And maybe you don't want Lamar. I don't know, but Hollywood and Andrews are pretty fucking good with Lamar. It's just like he's definitely a star, and you just need a little bit of help. And they have everything else. Offensive line's fine. Other weapons to draw coverage away are fine. Like the running backs are good. Everything is set up for him.
Defense is there. That team is a quarterback away. It's a quarterback away, so it is going to get a quarterback. One of these guys is going to go there. I think Derek Carr has a no trade clause. He's not turning it down for the Jets. Like, he's going to look at that team. He's going to see, like, that team is stacked, ready to go, ready to win something. The division, Buffalo's good, but the division's not like the AFC West or anything like that, where you could be the number one in other divisions and finish fourth in that division. So I think you're going to see a big name quarterback go there, a really good quarterback go there. So I think it's just set up for Garrett Wilson to absolutely smash this upcoming year. That offense as a whole, it's going to be, everyone's going to be on the Jaguars. And I know that the Jets will get some buzz, but the Jets is the team that we're probably going to want more of, just based on like draft capital and stuff like that. And speaking of the Jaguars, in the chat, people are asking how high Calvin Ridley is going to go. And I think he's going to go high because I think people are in love with the Jaguars this year. Like, they are going to be the darlings of the fantasy industry. Everyone's going to look at them. They're going to look at the rise of Trevor Lawrence over the season, the improvement of the offense, what they were able to do in the passing game. Everyone's going to, talk that they have Travis Etienne as the running back, who was fine. He wasn't great by any means this past year. He's
fine. A good runner. He's a good runner.
Yeah,
but that's the thing that does tilt me sometimes about the whole like fantasy bro analysis and stuff, is like Travis Etienne's a good football player, particularly when you hand him the football, right? Like a running back does. He's good. He's quite a bit above average probably as an NFL running back running the football. He's probably below average in terms of let's call it average. He's an average receiver with average to below average hands. And in an offense, they don't really check it down that much to the running back. And so it's like, he's a good runner, but like, honestly, there's a lot of good runners. Isaiah Pacheco got drafted in the 7th round. He's a pretty good runner. like being a good running back, like Rojo's a good runner. Like, there's a reason why we've done this stupid fucking song and dance with Rojo for 5 years. He's a good runner, but those guys exist everywhere because every best player on the high school team, every best athlete plays running back. Turn around, because it's the easiest thing to do to get your best players to football. So there's a shit ton of really good running backs that are good at running with the football. The skill is in being Christian McCaffrey and Austin Eckler and doing everything that playing the running back position at the NFL level requires. And maybe Etienne will get there. He's just not quite there yet.
Yeah, and they're going to get steamed. I think I saw a comparison. Evan brought it up. They're going to be last offseason's Detroit Lions, and I agree with that. Like, that's who that's going to be. One of my
Swift
wins.
Swift was like 1-2 turn. ASB. So that's a pretty reasonable comparison. Let's call Ridley, maybe like 4th-ish round, like Amon-Ra was. I don't know that Ingram's going to go where Hawkinson went, but maybe if tight end cost stays the same, Ingram was one of the better fantasy tight ends. If he sticks, I think he's a free agent, so he might need to come back.
Bring him back, yeah.
But I can't imagine why he would want to go anywhere. He finally had a good year for the first time in his career, and then you get Ridley, who I think it requires a lot of projection with Calvin Ridley. Like he was clearly good. He's not that young anymore. He hasn't played in a long time, like a really long time. And they do have Christian Kirk's good. Ingram is good. Zay Jones is out there, like gonna get some targets. Like, I don't know. Is like, I think we think of Calvin Ridley from when Julio left, and Calvin Ridley was the only remaining Falcon, and then that obviously didn't pan out. But we were like, oh my God, Calvin Ridley at the 1-2 turn. Like, there's no target competition. He's really good. I think people are thinking about him through that lens in fantasy, and I think he's more like T. Higgins as a ceiling or something like that. I don't know. Maybe I'm making that up, but I don't know. I don't think Calvin Ridley is as clear cut as I see a lot of people thinking about him really early on.
Yeah, I think I think that they're all going to get steamed. And I think you're going to be almost uncomfortable taking ETN where he's going to end up. I think you're going to be a little uncomfortable taking Ridley. Kirk, I think people still undervalue him to a degree because they hate Christian Kirk for some reason. But I don't know. You put him on the other side, he's going to do roughly what he did this year, I would say, probably again. Even with Calvin Ridley coming in, would be my thoughts, especially if they don't bring Ingram back or something like that. They had a connection between him and Lawrence. There is trust there. We do see him lean on Kirk a lot in a lot of these games. And I don't know what Zay Jones' deal is, but that receiving core is going to be nice. But I think they're all going to be steamed for the most part. So yeah, they're going to be one of the VAR interesting teams to kind of track. Philly
Lawrence is going to be crazy expensive.
Do you think so?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be real stick. Like, if they had I do way too many stupid thought experiments, but it helps me process. If they had not beaten the Chargers, and like, even if they had made the playoffs, but they laid that egg in the first half, right? Yep. It's like the Gabe Davis corollary. Like, this is like, Gabe was in my opinion, in a vacuum, a good best ball pick last season, because he was going to play every snap, right? Up weekly upside, blah, blah, blah. Like, a little bit of unknown. He's young, etc. But like, he did the thing against the Chiefs, and it was like, well, 2 years ago he would have went, and if that hadn't happened, he would have went in the 7th round. Now he's a 4th. Now he's a 4th or a 5th rounder. I feel like with Lawrence in particular and the Jags, it's like, there is something to be said about the team success coming on at the end. Like, well, some people believe in like he came on at the end of the year. I'm not saying whether you should or shouldn't believe it, but like, people are like, well, they really turned it on down the stretch, and they made the playoffs, and now they have Calvin Ridley. It's like, there's only positive things to say about the Jaguars, which then comes back. I mean, the quarterback is, the big thing, the big guy who benefits from all those positive things.
Yeah, so he might get steamed up.
I think Ken says 7th, 8th. I'm legitimately talking like,
it's gonna be higher,
like 4th round or something like that,
because of the quarterback factor this year.
All quarterbacks, yeah. Like this, like, if he would be in like that Dak era, right? Area. I agree with Ken. If the quarterback environment were like it were in 2022, but in 2023, like, Josh Allen might be a 1st round pick.
I think he will be.
Yeah, so we have to think about quarterback a little differently,
I think there might be 3 first-round quarterbacks this year, which is going to make teams like
Trey Lance, and that's what we're
Brock Purdy,
Jimmy, both of them.
Jimmy Garoppolo.
1-2 turn handcuff your 49ers quarterbacks.
Got to do it. No, but you're gonna see it, and it's gonna make teams like Philadelphia, we love that offense, right? But if Jalen Hurts and AJ Brown are going 1st round, and Devonta Smith is going to get steamed up to like 2nd, 3rd round level, area stuff, you're not going to be able to stack the Eagles next year. It's going to be damn near impossible, and they're going to be the Bengals from this year, but with a steamed up quarterback, right? Yeah. Because in order to get that double stack with Burrow, you had to go Chase Higgins right away, if you were lucky enough to get that. The Eagles, you're probably not going to see many AJ Brown, Jalen Hurts teams, if any at all. And
you may not physically be able to get Hurts and both the wide receivers. Devonta Smith was basically just AJ. Like, they were interchangeable. It wasn't Chase Higgins, where Chase is the 1 and T is the 2. Now, T is awesome. He might be the best 2 in the league, but Chase was the 1. We view AJ Brown as the 1, and I would view AJ Brown as the 1. Production wise, it's just 1 and 1. Like, Devonta Smith is basically just as good as AJ Brown.
The target share is crazy. So we're going to be having the conversation about them Here's a team that I don't want to have a conversation about this year, but we're going to have to, and it's going to suck. Quasi in the chat brings up, how much impact will Sean Payton have on Broncos players? And we are going to have this conversation for 7-8 months, which is good. It's going to make me vomit more than the hot dogs thing.
I hate the Broncos so much. We have 2 years in a row. We have to talk. All they did was trade away their future for one of the shittiest quarterbacks in the league and a fucking head coach. Like they didn't even get any good players. They don't have any draft picks, and all they got was Sean Payton and Russell Wilson and Albert O to never play. And like what? I don't know what is going on in Denver, but I'm not excited about this. And maybe this is a flaw. I know Sean Payton will have a better impact than Nathaniel Hackett. I'm sure I will draft some Broncos players, right? I like Jerry Jeudy, etc. I'm sure I will talk myself into Alberto. We'll see where Javonte goes. But like, I don't know. This Sean Payton thing is pretty silly to me. He's not a fucking miracle worker.
No.
Like Nathaniel Hackett was bad. He didn't make Russell Wilson do all that shit. Like It's not like he went out there and designed every step and every thought Russ had. He called bad plays, but he didn't make Russ play bad.
Yeah, he looked awful. I don't know what Sean Payton can do. It might be a blessing though, because Sean Payton coming in is going to have people still excited about Denver this year. And if we're seeing like premium values on Jerry Jeudy and the rest of these Broncos, I mean, hell, I love Javonte, but if we see a premium value on Javonte, Broncos might be the easiest team in the world to fade this year if they're all still up there, right? Like, why am I going to take any of these guys if we're looking at 5th, 6th round values on Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton and stuff like that? So
that leads into a big lesson for me that isn't necessarily any one of these teams, but something. It doesn't have like super direct application, and I think the whole like, oh, fade what the smart people are saying is such a, like, some people will say that like, well, everybody thought Kyle Pitts was going to break out, so I faded him. It's like, that's not really how you should, it's like fade the public type of a thing in sports betting. It's like, that's not really real, nor is it smart. But thinking about guys who are priced like the Broncos, like we do this in DFS every week, like it's not the same game, but X player is 5,500 mega chalk because we're expecting what Zay. Remember how many weeks was like Zay Jones at like 5K, like super chalky in DFS on DraftKings, and it's like, yeah, I know he had 12 targets last week, but he also has games with 2 targets, and he's Zay fucking Jones. Like we don't even know how good he is. Well, actually, we know he's not very good, and so it's like, that's an easy, if he burns you, you move on. We can do that. I can do that in DFS really well. I tilt my face off when he scores 25 or whatever, but it's like, I'm willing to just be like, there's a lot of volatility in this dude. And I think we approach volatility a lot of the times in best ball as just like I'm cool with it because it has, right? That means upside. If they're volatile, as opposed to being like, there is a real way that this can go real wrong, like really wrong, versus the Garrett Wilson example, which is like, I want to find those dudes where it's like, I can't, it didn't go wrong with Mike White and Joe Flacco. So how the fuck is it going to go wrong with whoever they get at quarterback? Even with the chat was worried about Hackett is the OC there. That's a concern. So maybe that's a factor. But like Jameson Williams in the 7th or 8th round, like how does this go wrong? Like this goes wrong in the way that Gabe Davis went wrong, except Jameson Williams is good. Like he has a few big weeks. He's a disappointment from a point total perspective and like a usable week perspective, but he gets you 3 spike weeks and you're like, I don't know, that's fine. That's how Jameson Williams goes wrong. How the Broncos go wrong is Russ sucks. Like if the same thing happens and the market says, no, I'm willing to buy back in. It's like, well, if Russell Wilson, it's like if Russ was chalk in DFS and like Cortland Sutton was chalk in DFS, it's like, well, just fade it because the offense stinks. But in best ball, we don't apply the same thing because it's not apples to apples. But I think being more thoughtful, really, just about those types of situations, as opposed to like, I love Elijah Moore, I'm going to keep chasing him up to the 6th round. You know what I mean? It's like, well, his quarterback, Zach Wilson. So, maybe just like if you really want to invest, take Garrett Wilson in the 11th and don't chase Elijah Moore up to the 6th. That's how I feel kind of about the Broncos. Is like the situation could be really bad. It could be better. So that's why they're intriguing. But if we're going to push Sutton and Judy and stuff back up to where they got drafted this year, like, fuck that, dude. We like, just sprinkle them. You don't need to go crazy.
Yeah, and again, probably just be a full fade for me. If there's guys that I really like in that 5th round range, you know
Right.
how I am. I'll just hammer that guy. If I like that dude, I'm just going to take him. If I think that the Broncos are going to be a very underperforming offense, then I'm not going to take him. Felix in the chat brings up the Chargers, and I don't know if I agree with this sentiment. He's saying that the Chargers will be chalky because you'll get their top players at a value this year, I think. Other than Eckler, what top player? I mean, and obviously Herbert we like as a quarterback. What top players are we excited about on the Chargers this year? Keenan Allen's got to be, he's 30 something years old. Mike Williams is Mike Williams at this point. He's not going to change. If he can stay healthy half the season, you're happy. Right? Like, that's just who this guy is. I'm not excited about the Chargers this season. They're going to have to make some moves, like, in order for them to be viable. I think they're going to have to go knocking on the door for a Godwin or an Evans when that fire sale starts, or something, just to reinforce this wide receiver corps if they want to make an actual run. I don't know if they're going to be looking to get younger. They're going to have to at some point. I don't know if
they got to draft somebody. Yeah, they got to draft. This class is not my favorite wide receiver class, but there's plenty of intriguing guys, that you can take in the 2nd, 3rd round. Mm-hmm. That I think that dude is who will be that, like, whatever dude they like. A guy who just continues to like move up for me is Zay Flowers. Went to Boston College, and he's smaller, but is just crazy explosive and just really, he plays bigger than, he's 5'10". He plays bigger than that. Is the guy that we've been dreaming about for Justin Herbert, like down the field, like played in the ACC, so it's so, but like lit people up down the field in the ACC. And he's not like too small. He's small, but he's not, he's not that small. He's legit good down the field weapon. Would be young in a wide receiver room that is old as fuck and can't stay healthy between both Keenan. Hayden Wings from Underdog also put out a tweet I saw within the last week or something that was just speculation about some guys who could be traded or cut at wide receiver, and he put Keenan Allen on there. And I don't know his contract situation offhand, but he turns 31 in April. That's not awesome for as much money as he makes, and he's still good, but it's kind of like would you rather have, a couple of young guys to pair with Herbert for the next decade, or keep paying Keenan Allen, who only plays 12 games a year at best and has no real juice left? I think that it's possible they remake the whole wide receiver room.
Yeah.
Like, anything could happen here. They don't have a worthwhile tight end. It's like Eckler is like all they have. So I think the Felix's comment could go either way. They could be like some of the sexiest picks, right? They draft a couple of guys, or they trade for an intriguing wide receiver or tight end or whatever. They could be the guys we are chasing up the board, or they go into it with this same shitty wide receiver group and they spend a 6th round pick on some guy, right? Like they did with, they just draft another Josh Palmer, and it's like, who do you actually like out of those guys besides Eckler? Nobody. I can't imagine they don't beef up the wide receiver room. Brandon Staley's not that dumb, but I don't know. They could go. They're really polarizing to me.
Let's not forget what Eckler was saying this past offseason too. He didn't want the workload that he ended up getting.
Forced into it again. Forced into it 2 years in a row.
Yeah, and so Eckler is going to be a top 3, top 4 pick probably in fantasy. And if they can find a way to make it so that he's not getting the workload, you're going to be cooked on Austin Eckler if he's not getting the workload that he got last year. And he shouldn't have that workload. He's just not the guy that should have that. Kudos to him for staying like relatively healthy through all of it too. It's impressive, but yeah, the Chargers are not a team that I am currently excited for. at the moment. And we'll probably rank offenses this month, like in the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks or something. That's what we started last year with. And we'll have a show where we review our final rankings on offenses, see what we were smart about, seeing what we weren't smart about. But I think the Chargers, if we do this offensive ranking thing as stands, they might not be that bottom row, but they might be one up for me because people are, it's going to be, God, who was the team that we loved the quarterback, but we weren't drafting any of the pieces last year? There was one team like that, and it made no sense. And we were like, and it panned out that way. That we're like, we were taking. I'll think of it later, but we have inverses of that too, right? Where we were taking like we were loving wide receivers and pass catchers, and then we wouldn't draft it was the Lions. And it's like, well, if we love the Lions pass catchers and stuff like that, then we should have been drafting Jared Goff a little bit higher, probably. Yep. And this is going to be the inverse situation, I think. Like, you got to step back and be like, well, I love Herbert, but I don't want to draft anyone with them. So should I be drafting Justin Herbert in terms of like where he's going? Because he's going to be up high.
I do think that's an interesting point, because we have talked about what you mentioned, like with the quarterback.
Jared Goff. Sorry, Evan brought it up. It clearly was the Chiefs. You loved Mahomes. You didn't love the pass catchers other than Kelsey. And perfect example.
Absolutely. Yeah, Jesus Christ. I mean, the wide receivers were fucking Juju, the corpse of Juju Smith-Schuster in the 4th round on Underdog or whatever. MVS and Sky Moore. They all got hurt, and Sky can't get on the field. Like, MVS became an alpha to take them to the Super Bowl, which, how awesome was that, by the way?
Yeah. It was great. I put him in the double spy that week, so it was
totally also wasn't tilting at all that had thousands and thousands of dollars over the course of the both in DFS and in best ball on MVS, and he does it in a basically a fucking single game playoff slate. But the quarterback thing, I think, is a good lesson, because we're going to be talking a lot about quarterbacks. I don't want to keep beating that horse, but when we're breaking ties with the later round quarterback, so for example, I understand why I did this. It's a youth and a kind of uncertainty upside situation, but I think it was a little flawed in that. So like, I was like always drafting Mac Jones over Jared Goff last year, because Mac's the younger guy. Jared Goff is just like not really an upside quarterback, and I know he had some good games this year because the Lions defense was still terrible, but that's part of the point. Was his weapons were all good and Mac's were all bad. Like, I wasn't drafting any of Mac's weapons. I guess the tight ends a little bit, Ramondre, but that's not helpful to Mac. But I was drafting Mac because of Mac over Goff because of Goff. At the elite levels, maybe like the Mahomes thing is different. Mahomes is a generational quarterback. By the way, the most overused term of all time, generational, although Mahomes actually is generational.
Yes.
But I was like, well, Mac Jones profiles as a player I would rather take, right? Second year, maybe he was pretty good as a rookie, maybe he grows or whatever. And Goff profiles as like literally the least sexy pick of all time. He's slower than me, and doesn't throw the ball down the field, blah blah blah. But like, I liked everyone of like I had Amon-Ra. I forced myself to take Hawkinson. I was drafting Swift. I drafted Jamal Williams. I drafted some Jameson Williams, DJ Chark, right? I drafted all these dudes. I didn't really draft the Patriots. Why the hell would I have a bunch of Mac Jones and no Jared Goff? I'm not saying don't ever take Mac, but that's kind of a lesson at the quarterback position that I do feel like is applicable, is just not to be so hyper focused on like one element of that quarterback, which was talent, right? We like to apply talent at the other positions, but like, or even uncertainty. But the quarterback thing was just like, dude, why do you have 0% Jared Goff and like 12% Mac Jones? Like, even if it was like 6 and 6, like that's fine. That's totally fine. But just the way I thought about quarterbacks, I want to be a little bit smarter about.
Yeah, Sam, I want to look at them more as a team, like a team perspective. And Mahomes was fine. Even we still don't know who caught all those passes and got all those yards other than Kelsey. How he threw for 5,000 yards. Who caught them? right? Like, because we
I
don't
actually
know.
don't know. I actually have no fucking idea.
Yeah, because Kelsey had a great year, but he didn't catch 5,000 yards worth of passes, and it's mind blowing because if you stacked Mahomes every week, you were dusted off because his leading wide receiver had 40 yards, but Mahomes threw for 400, and you're just like,
dude, I'll never forget in the rest of my fantasy football career that San Francisco 49ers game. We had a birthday or something like that at my wife's sister's and my sister-in-law's house.
Mm-hmm.
And I stacked for the millionth time the Chiefs, and they're playing the 49ers in the afternoon slate. And it like MVS is actually doing something. And it was I played Mahomes with Juju and MVS, and then played Kittle instead of Kelsey. It's the best DFS week I had of the entire season. Literally has made my whole year, made my best ball season and DFS season. That one game, MVS caught a long touchdown, had 100 yards, and Juju, it was his biggest game of the year, and Kelsey didn't do a lot, and Kittle had a big game. And like I'll literally never forget it because it was like it felt like, what week was that? 7. It felt like total vindication. It was like, well, here's 7th week of me stubbornly stacking these stupid fucking Chiefs wide receivers and saying the same thing on every DFS show. Like, you're never going to get you're never going to get Patrick Mahomes stacks at this low of ownership and this cheap again. It's like, dude, you said that for 6 fucking weeks. You can't keep using that as an excuse.
It's just the meme of you just putting the clown makeup on as you just continue to say.
Yes, I'm literally, you're never gonna get Mahomes stacks, and it's like I was saying that every single goddamn week, and then finally, it came through. But that's just the point. It's like one out of every, like 2 times a season, one of the wide receivers did something.
But also it helps you realize why DFS isn't dead. My shining moment was this past weekend slate where Patrick Mahomes came in at like 13% ownership in the double spy on a 2-game slate, and I was just like,
yeah,
I'm printing money already, like, because I have Patrick Mahomes. So yeah, people still get scared of stuff, and you can still exploit the field on those things. But you can in best ball as well.
Kelsey had 1,300 yards. Juju had 900 yards. I'm surprised. I would not have guessed that at all. MVS was the 3rd leading receiver with 687. Ugh. Jesus Christ. McKinnon had 512. And then here's how wrong we were about the Chiefs wide receivers and just their passing game in general. Who had the 5th? So Kelsey, Juju, MVS, McKinnon. Who was the 5th highest receiving yardage on the Chiefs?
Don't tell me it was Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
No, equally as bad though.
Equally as bad?
Well, equally as bad in retrospect.
Oh man,
he's a wide receiver.
It's not McCall, is it?
Justin
was it Watson?
5th on the Chiefs in receiving yards.
Jesus.
We drafted Sky Moore in the 8th round, and Justin Watson, Noah Gray, and McCole Hardman all had more receiving yards than he did. Oh, Noah Gray and Justin Watson.
Oh, man. They got to get somebody this year.
Yes.
They have to get somebody this year.
Or Tony. I mean, I do like that if Kelsey comes back. The Tony move, I know he's got hurt again. Shout out to him. Also on all my best ball teams, but I like Tony. Hopefully Sky can be at least like a rotational piece with another off season. You would think if Kelsey comes back, they like add one more decent guy. I think that they'll be even better than this year.
Yeah, I mean they need to get. I don't know. They just need somebody. Tony, I would like, but I'm not a big injury prone guy. But yeah. Jesus Christ, man, this dude. Of all dudes, cannot stay on the field. Never fake an injury again for a touchdown celebration, by the way. Like, because we know who you are. Like, we expected that to be real. And guess what? It was 3 plays later. So, yeah. And Kelsey's going to be, if Kelsey comes back, he's going to be such a premium. And I think they're going to use him sparingly throughout the season just to, like, get through to the playoffs with him. So we're going to have that conversation. There's so many conversations to have this offseason. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be frustrating a little bit too, but free agency is going to be fun. And the running back thing, we've talked about running backs, but we haven't hit on this free agent running back list and just the musical chairs that position is probably going to play. You know, Saquon, Miles Sanders, Josh Jacobs, like et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Some of them will re-sign with their teams, but not everyone's going to re-sign with their team. Like, I think Saquon might, because what else is the Giants going to do? Another team that has to get some wide receivers. And the thing is, like you said, the draft class for wide receivers isn't that deep, considering
like not that good at the top, and it's not that deep. There's a bunch of interesting guys, which is like one way to say that it's an underwhelming class, but there's some there what I would call it is, and this is stuck in my head because I'm writing something using this title. It's like an island of misfit toys. It's not that these guys are bad. It's that they're all like the redheaded stepchild of wide. Like Zay Flowers is like one of my favorite guys. He's like 5'10", 180 pounds.
Yeah.
Right. Jackson Smith-Njigba is awesome, or we think he's awesome. He played one season, was really good for that season, never played again, and we don't think he's very fast, and he's not very big, right? So it's like that doesn't sound like that's the wide receiver one. That's the best wide receiver in the class. You know, the second best wide receiver, Quentin Johnston from what a lot of people view as the second best wide receiver, Quentin Johnston from TCU, has like never had a good target share, and his highest target share was this year finally, with like 24%. It's like, dude, all these other motherfuckers have like 40% target shares, and Quentin Johnston is going to go in the first round with a 24% target share, right? So they're just weird. A lot of little guys, a lot of slot receivers, right? That kind of thing. And so guys are going to pop. It's just good luck right now guessing who that's going to be from wide receiver. So to your point, that throws a huge wrinkle into things. Like last year, it was like, dude, Drake London went top 10, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Jameson Williams, blah, blah, blah. There was tons of dudes we were really excited about, and they were all pretty clean prospects, relatively speaking. That's not the case this year.
Yeah, and the free agent class for wide receivers was really good. Do you want me to tell you a quick best 10 list of free agent wide receivers that are going to be out there this year?
Yes.
Number one is Juju Smith-Schuster. So we now know how this list is going to go.
Oh no.
This is from FanDuel. Jacoby Myers, Allen Lazard, DJ Chark, Darius Slayton, McCole Hardman, Jarvis Landry, Marvin Jones, Paris Campbell, Noah Brown. It's a real bad class for wide receivers in terms of free agency.
You made it to Noah Brown in a top 10 list of anything.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So other than trades, which I'm sure there will be some, I think we're going to see Hopkins probably move or something like that. But who else? Really? Like, I'm maybe a surprise or two. We didn't expect to see AJ Brown move. I didn't expect the Tyreek Hill trade like last year. Hollywood moved. Yeah. So I think you're going to see maybe one or two. I don't know who that's going to be. I think some of the Tampa guys might move. But yeah, it's going to be
lots of Ayuk. Dennis mentioned Ayuk as a potential. There's been tons of, because he's set to get paid in a couple of years, and people are talking about trying to get out ahead of that. But I think that they can franchise him, or fifth year option, because fifth year option. He was first round pick, right? But I was reading more into it. Everybody keeps projecting like Ayuk as a trade candidate, and I'm like, they got him for 2 more years. And they're trying to win the fucking Super Bowl, dude.
Yeah.
Like, they're like, call me crazy. I don't think, like, I know that like we think about things this way, but like, I don't think that NFL teams that are in their Super Bowl window, like one of the best rosters, if not the best roster outside of quarterback in the entire NFL, is like, we have to re-sign him in 3 years, so fuck it, get rid of him. Let's play Ray McLeod when we're trying to win a Super Bowl. Like, I don't really think that that's how NFL teams operate. So I'm not thinking Ayuk gets, but I wasn't thinking that Hollywood would get traded, or like you said, AJ Brown. So you never know.
He might, and everyone's comparing it because of the Debo situation. Where, I like Ayuk a lot. I think he's a number one in this league. But being a number one in this league doesn't make you Debo Samuel at the same time.
No.
So I don't think that they're going to play it the same way that they played it with Debo with him. So
this is the other one you see, similar to Ayuk, a little better. Evan brings up that the Bengals are going to be trying to figure some shit out here with Chase. Going to be due in a few years for a maybe the biggest, him and Jefferson competing for the biggest wide receiver contract of all time, and Burrow for the biggest quarterback contract of all time. And they have T, who's due for a payday here pretty soon. Like, what do they do with all that? I think
I don't think they move them.
It's the same thing that, like, we'll see what they do in the draft and all that kind of stuff. But like, I just view it very similarly that a lot of the times we see teams just try to figure these things out, as opposed to, I'm not even saying what Evan's saying or what a lot of people in the chat or we are saying is illogical to try to move on from these guys. But teams don't always think about it that way. They'll think about it like Tyreek, right? They'll think about it the next time when he's 27, 28, 29 or whatever. They'll be like, okay, now I don't want to pay Tyreek until he's 32. Let's let somebody else do that. T. Higgins is young, like super, super young. A lot of the times they'll sacrifice on defense, right? Or at running, right? There's no reason Joe Mixon needs to be on this team. Get a rookie, 6th rounder, whatever. And, Samaje Perine's outplaying Mixon right now. They don't need a running back to make any money on this team. Little things that teams will do to figure out the T and Ayuk situation when they're good, right? The Titans were like, fuck, we're not very good, and we got to pay AJ Brown. Let's try to get out ahead of this. But the Bengals and the 49ers were just in the conference championship game, and you could argue the Bengals should have won and the 49ers could have won if the whole quarterback thing went different. So I think that the teams just view things a little bit differently. But again, of course, it's possible that those guys get traded. I'd just be very surprised.
Yeah, I think, like, just based on the situation that the team's in, Burrow's going to get paid, Chase is going to get paid, but guess what? They are on rookie deals right now. So what I think they're going to do this year, they're loading up to win it. They want to get one in with this group. Yeah. And if that means sacrificing a potential 1st-round pick, like by trading T. Higgins, then I think they make that sacrifice, because they were on the doorstep again this year. They could be the class of the AFC next year. They could be. Mm-hmm. They reassure a few positions on this team, and they can do that. They can hire some mercenaries. This is what you do with a rookie quarterback. You hire some mercenaries on 1-2 year deals. You overpay for them because you're cheap at the quarterback position. You're cheap at all your skill positions. I think they're just going to lock and load one more ride of Chase, Burrow, Higgins, and then next year we make all of our decisions on all 3 guys. You make it all at the same time. So I don't think I know it's a big thing, but I don't think Higgins gets moved.
All that being said, any of these guys get traded to the Chiefs or the Bills, and holy shit, like, particularly the Chiefs, like, at least the Bills still have Diggs, but like, we just talked about the Chiefs wide receiver disaster room. Like, if they can scoop Ayuk, like, oh my God, like, Ayuk's the 2nd-round pick if he goes to the Chiefs.
I mean, and how much capital the Chiefs want to make in trading for wide receivers? I mean, hell, if you're doing that, you traded Tyreek Hill. Why would you even trade Tyreek Hill in the first place when we saw what he's still capable of?
That's the other thing you do. You have to have a buyer for the right. You can say, let's get away from Brandon Ayuk and T. Higgins all you want, but a lot of these wide receiver needy teams just trade. They're wide receiver needy because they just traded away Tyreek Hill and AJ Brown and Hollywood Brown and et cetera, right? The Cardinals are going to trade away DeAndre Hopkins. They're not. The whole reason they're trading those guys away is because they're not trying to pay that guy. Now, the Ayuk and T are younger, of course, but the Chiefs have gone this route because they need to pay Mahomes, right? They want to pay the offensive line, they want to pay, et cetera. So they're strategically trying to do it, like, through the draft, through young players, some free agent shots like Juju and MVS, draft Sky, right? Take some shots at wide receiver in the draft and find their own fucking T. Higgins and pay him $1 million a year instead of giving up a 1st-round pick and then paying T $20 million a year.
Yeah, so that's going to be the thing with teams like that. It's going to be ugly for some of these teams. They're just it was wide receiver musical carousel last year. The Bears were the team that lost out on that game, but every team's going to lose out on it this year.
Yeah, there's nobody available. DeAndre Hopkins should bring in a king's ransom, even though he's old as shit, because if you need a wide receiver, what else are you going to do?
And there's only going to be limited teams lining up for him too. So, I mean, where does he go? If I hear New England one more time, I'm going to vomit. Why would you bring him to a team like this? You got to bring him to a legitimate contender. he's going to want to go to a legitimate contender, right? So that might be a good place for us to cap it tonight. What do you think?
I think so. I was just going to say what's one like I always cap the DFS shows with like, what's your conviction play of the week or whatever. What's the one thing that has like stuck out to you the most from over the course of the last month or whatever that you're like, this is the thing in 2023? A player, a position, a draft strategy or whatever. Is there one thing that has stuck out to you?
Well, it kind of correlates to something I saw in the chat earlier because I'm on the complete opposite end of it. I saw someone mention that maybe this is the year of 0 wide receiver. And I don't know if you guys remember what drafts were like last year. Once you hit the 12th, 13th round, the wide receiver position was dead at that point. Like there was very few guys that made any difference after there. It was KJ Osborne a few weeks. It was Zay Jones, maybe one or two other guys. But that position, once it hits its cutoff, you're done. So I don't think so. I think 0 RB here, specifically, maybe even hero RB, is gonna be the play going forward. Even more so this year than last year. I mean, it's one of those things we're gonna lean into. The double RB thing is gonna be tough because I think when we look at the first round, 12 picks, right? 3 might be quarterbacks. I think you might only
one might be Travis Kelce and then a bunch of wide receivers.
And you might see 1 or 2 RBs. Like it's going to be Christian McCaffrey,
Eckler,
right? Eckler,
Bijan,
and Bijan, and that's probably it. And maybe towards the end, Kenneth Walker slides in at that.
JT, right? The next tier of those guys that are like, we know they're good, they have upside, whatever, but they're like late first. They're like. Who was there this year? The Mixons and Swifts and whatever. We're like, they're pretty good. They're on good offenses, or they were good as rookies like Walker was or whatever.
But all those dust balls are going to be 2nd and 3rd round picks this year, and we're not going to want them.
Yeah. Right? What are you going to who are you taking? Right. You're never going to hear me argue against McCaffrey. I won't even right now, at least. I'm sure I will over the summer argue against Eckler. I'm definitely not going to argue against Bijan, but like, who are you taking that you don't want the early wide receivers? Like Kamara is going to be like 30. Derrick Henry is going to be like fucking 32. Yeah. Mixon could get cut. I don't know his contract situation. Like who up there are you even excited about? Like Ken Walker was good, but Penny, I assume, will be back next year. Like what running backs up there do you really even want? And now let's list the wide receivers. You want all of those guys, and you want the quarterbacks. And so, I would go the opposite. I would say, the wide receiver position is deep. It's not an unfair point to say wide receiver is deep, but it's deep in numbers. It's not deep in rounds of good players available.
That's
it is there are like 50 or whatever good wide receivers. I agree. But they're all gone by the 6th or 7th round. Mm-hmm. So like 0 wide receiver, you're if you'd gone 0 wide receiver last year, let's just say don't take one for the first 6 or 7 rounds. Your first wide receiver is like fucking Sky Moore, right? Because now I don't have any wide receivers. Now I got to take some upside guys. Oh, let's look at the Chiefs, MVS and Sky Moore, swing and a miss, right? Yep. Or maybe you even went like upside Elijah Moore. That seems like upside, swing and a miss. Like even if you hit on all those wide receivers, like you said, you got a couple of weeks out of KJ Osborne, just so happened to be at the right time. Got a couple of weeks out of Zay. Like I drafted a lot of Zay, but like I don't want my wide receiver room centered around KJ Osborne and Zay. Even Garrett Wilson, he was good. The good wide receivers dunked on these guys. Like it wasn't close. So I would go literally the opposite. Is my takeaway still is like, dude, you can find Ken Walker. We just talked about all those old running backs. Like, dude, like Pollard's a free agent. I'm definitely not drafting Zeke. So whatever is going on with the Cowboy situation, we're going to want the other dude, right? Josh Jacobs was free. Ramondre was cheap, right? All these guys. Donta Foreman was super free, like not even drafted at certain points of the season. There's just so many running backs that you can find. And so I'm going to continue to lean into that this year. And I feel even stronger about it this year because of what we talked about with running backs. It's like that whole crop, Henry, Dalvin, Mixon, Kamara, whatever, that we've been smashing in the first round for 5 years, they're aging out, man. They're aging out. And that means if they do age out, the guys that are going in the guys who, went 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th round, whenever they age out next year, I want to find those guys that are first and second round picks next year.
As we talk through that, the funny thing is the running back dead zone that we always talk about, it might start in the 3rd round this year.
Yeah.
We might see the RB dead zone in the 3rd round. So that's this is what we're talking about this year. This year is going to be so unique in the sense of past drafts. I think it's going to set the tone for future years, but I really think that this is going to be such a pivotal year in drafts going forward. We're going to look back at 2023 for the next 5 to 10 years and be like, there was a big wave changing at that point, and you want to be ahead of that wave, right?
Yep.
Or like it's the old analogy of like when you're in the woods and you're getting chased by a bear, like the draft change is the bear. You don't have to be the fastest, but you want to be faster than everybody else that's running from that bear, right? Like,
yes,
like at least faster than a couple of them. So I think you're going to see a big change in drafts, and the running back position, every position is going to be changing other than wide receiver. We're going to be steady at wide receiver, and we're going to want a lot of them.
Yep. That's the take, is figuring out, right, how to stay ahead of and where to dip your toes in to some of those guys who, maybe we will just full fade all those running backs. That's what I feel right now, but I don't know how I'll feel in a few months. But like figuring out all of that is like, when do you dip your toes into some of these potentially, right? Josh Jacobs was a theoretically unappealing running back last year who fell. When do you dip your toes in to try to find Josh Jacobs versus when do you stick to this? What my kind of thesis is like, I'm staying out ahead of this wave. I'm drafting all the wide receivers and the young dudes, even some of the wide receivers, right? I don't want probably DeAndre Hopkins. I don't want Keenan Allen. There's those guys. I don't want those guys because they're aging out too. I want to find Garrett Wilson, right? I want to find whichever rookie breaks out, et cetera, Jameson Williams. So like, that's the game to me, is like all the positional ADP. Like if you're using 2-year-old data to be like, this is the structure I need to look at the win rates on this structure. Like I got it. You are in for a rude awakening.
Please enter my draft.
Summer. Yeah. Like you need to like Rotoviz is incredible and have done incredible, but like the quarterback window, good luck using the fucking quarterback window this year if all the good quarterbacks are not in that window. Like the quarterback window is gonna be like Daniel Jones, like and he was great, but like I'm not going all in on Daniel Jones this year. So I just think that the whole thing is just the one last thing that we didn't get in on the running back stuff. The crazy other thing that like the guys who were supposed to be the next guy that would have changed this whole conversation. Javonte, serious knee injury. Like we don't know when he's going to be. Brees, serious injury. We don't know when he's going to be ready, right? Like the guys who were, why this is so chaotic is the guys who were supposed to be the next, right? Okay, Mixon falls out, Dalvin falls out, whatever. These guys fall out. We're supposed to have the next guy, right? Yep. Zeke's dust. It's Pollard's. Like if Zeke was gone, they cut him and they re-signed Pollard. Maybe that could still happen, I guess. But Pollard got hurt.
Yep, bad injury.
Yeah, really bad injury. Like it's chaos. It's total chaos. And so I think that's a good, like we can thrive in that chaos if we're smart about it. So I'm glad we kind of talked about that.
Let's just tout one last thing. This little gold belt over my shoulder here.
Oh, yes.
That belongs to one Mr. Patrick Corain. He doesn't have it yet because I was trying to set up a time and a day to meet up with him. I'm going to drive it to New York because I am.
Oh my gosh.
I'm a man of my word. And I said I would bring it to him. And he's like, oh, yeah, those dates are going to be kind of tough. I'm going to Thailand for 3 weeks.
Fucking millionaires.
All right. Must be nice, right? So,
okay, Elon.
Yeah, just taking off. And supposedly he had it booked before. I don't believe it. But anyways, the point I want to make is we are 1 for 1 in the Best Ball Royal Rumble, that if you win the Best Ball Royal Rumble, you win Best Ball Mania too. Like, so when we do that draft this year, you're going to want to watch it because somebody in that draft is probably going to win Best Ball Mania. That's all I'm saying.
It's true.
Hopefully it's
me. True. The seats are going to be a very hot commodity now. We're going to have to not be so free and loose with the entries into that. We can't have Overzet on vacation, like fucking around with Evan Silva on the draft. Now you got to take this serious, because clearly, it's at least good juju to finish near the top.
Yeah, and we will put out our Venmo number, our Venmo accounts to everybody, that if they want a spot in it, we can be bought. Just so you know, we can be bought. So
I didn't win Best Ball Mania, to be clear. So yes, my Venmo will be open at those times.
Yeah. So that's kind of the way I wanted to cap it off. I'm excited for this upcoming year. I'm stressed for it in the sense that, like, it's going to be a lot of work in terms of keeping up with draft trends and stuff.
Oh yeah.
But it's going to be exciting because it's going to be different. So it's going to be a fun year of best ball coming up. And I can't even imagine what these prize pools are going to be this year after last year's explosion.
No, I'm excited.
These playoff contests filling in one day all of a sudden. It's best ball's coming up, man. We said last year was going to be the biggest year, and it's just going to keep growing. It's just so big. So
we're going to say this. Year. We're going to say the same thing next year at this time. Like, I can't wait to see what the prize pools are like. I mean, there is probably a point of a little bit of diminishing where they can, in the playoff structure at least, on drafters, they could probably just continue to get as big, because you don't have to worry about pods and final rounds and stuff. We're definitely not to the point where it's too big anywhere, but you do have to worry like too many, like you don't want like 5,000 people in the week 17 final. That takes away a little bit from the sweat and all that kind of stuff. So there is something, but we're definitely not there yet. And that's not going to stop them from tons of crazy tournaments. Like I said, close to the top. I mean, we're getting huge baseball tournaments and golf best ball tournaments and all of that. So I can only imagine what NFL is going to look like. On that note, right before we get out of here, going to be doing I've been working on baseball rankings, golf rankings, and content and stuff for those. Shout out to Underdog for dropping those on me when I'm trying to do some other stuff. And then we're coming out with our first ever like rookie guide. So a big piece, kind of some of the stuff we talked about, in my opinion, of best ball, like people have really mostly only thought about it through like a dynasty lens or even maybe a redraft lens. But I actually think the rookies are something we discuss a lot, like offhand, but we don't maybe treat the way that they should as kind of the skeleton keys to best ball. Right. Finding Justin Jefferson when he's a rookie, finding Garrett Wilson going in the 12th round, right? Finding these guys is hugely important to your success in best ball. And so we're going to put out our first rookie draft guide and kind of go through the process of obviously evaluating the players, but talking about it mainly from a best ball focus. So that'll be coming soon. And then obviously this is kind of kicking off our football stream. So we'll talk about some of those rookies on these shows, talk about tons of other stuff, and also dive into the baseball and golf stuff. So now that we have all this shit to draft and we're soon going to have 2023 drafts to do, we will be rocking and rolling here soon.
Can't wait. Really excited about I can't wait to see what they do for these big board drafts this year. It's gonna be good stuff.
You mean like a $250K to first big board tournament or something? Probably. Like, it's gonna be so silly.
Hell yeah. Anyways, Nashville, me and you.
Yep 100%. I will definitely. I'm sure I'll see you before then. We got to think about the karaoke thing, so you got a week and a half to figure out karaoke song, as do I. We'll get out of here. We'll see you guys. I'm gonna be back. Rob's busy. I'm gonna be back this week. I think diving into baseball. I haven't scheduled it out yet. I'm working on a guest. Be on the lookout for more content here on this YouTube. Also be on the lookout for, like I said, rankings, articles, draft guides, all sorts of stuff coming out to the website. And we will see you